Welcome students to another video lecture with Mr. Kinnett here. As you can see, our lesson for 6.4 is about percent of change. This is a really common calculation used in science and in our everyday world. I'm going to copy down or pause right now and copy down what you see. Okay, welcome back students. So our essential question is, how can we find the percent of change for a given situation? And percent of change is a ratio that compares the quantity of change to the original amount. And this is a formula we're going to have to memorize. So this boxed area over here, can you please write in the margin? We're going to have to memorize this formula. The POC from Avid, if you're an Avid student, the percent of change equals the new amount minus the original amount divided by the original amount. And I sometimes remember that as no over O times 100. And what do you think that 100 is multiplying by? That's turning this change into a percent. You got it. Okay, so a percent of increase or a percent of change that is positive is a percent of increase. A percent of change that's negative is called a percent of decrease. So let's go see how to use this formula. So the most challenging part in this lesson is actually determining what the amount is that's new and what the amount is that's original. And I always remember that the new one is the one we go to. So the new, you go to. It's the one you've changed into. Okay, so pause here and copy down what you see. Okay, welcome back. So step one is determine the new and the original quantity. So Koa had 318. Is that the new amount or the original amount? Yeah, that's the original amount. He started with 318 of these wonderful Pokemon cards. What is the new amount that he has now? Yep, you're right. It's 273. So again, I think sometimes the hardest part of these problems is actually determining the new and the original, because the rest of this is going to be copying down the formula, substituting, and solving using the order of, yep, you got it, operations. So first off, we have to figure out if this was an increase or a decrease. Do we already actually know that answer? He started with 318 and ends with 273. Is that an increase or a decrease? Yeah, that's a decrease, and it's because the number went down. So using that, we logically know we should end up with a negative answer. So let's formula or substitute into our formula here. I'm going to get another page to do this on, to have some space. So POC, percent of change, equals the new minus the original divided by the original. And all of this has to be multiplied by 100. So now we're going to substitute in. We're following step 2 here. And the new amount was 273. And the original amount was 318. So that goes here and here. And we have to multiply all that by 100 in the end. And now we're going to follow the order of operations. So our percent of change here equals, well, 273 minus 318. We know we're going to end up with a negative. We always put the larger absolute value on the top before we subtract. And we end up with negative 45 over 318 times 100. Well, now the order of operations says we have division as well as multiplication in the same problem, so we have to do the one on the left first. So 318 divided by 45. I'm going to let you do that long division out. So pause here if you need to. Okay, welcome back. After doing your long division, you should have ended up with 0, 1, 4, 0.15, and then it just keeps on going. And our directions did say round to the 10th if necessary. So you have to realize the rounding of the 10th doesn't happen until you have your final answer. So we didn't want to stop at the tenths. We're actually going to need as far out to the 10,000ths there. So we now have negative 0.1415 times 100. Once we multiply by 100, we're going to end up with the percent of change equals negative 14.15%. But we're going to round to the tenths place, so the actual answer we should box is negative 14.2%, and that's the percent of change for Koa's Pokemon cards. He's decreased his amount by 14.2%. Okay, let's move on to the next ones. So we have a similar concept. It's actually the same exact thing as percent of change. It's just called the percent of error. And this is where we kind of connect into our science lesson. So to find the percent of error, you use your guess amount minus the actual amount divided by the actual amount times 100. And I'm going to get one more slide over before I ask you to pause. So go ahead and pause here and copy down what you see. All right, welcome back, students. So hopefully you're able to copy down what you see. And we're going to circle the things we care about here. Brianna estimates that this building has 660 seats. This was her estimate. Turns out the actual amount in there is 750 seats. So our percent of error equals the guess minus the actual divided by the actual times 100. Her estimate was 660. And we're going to have to subtract the actual amount divided by the actual amount times 100. And we're going to finish up this problem in class. So go ahead and leave some space. Yes, I asked, please leave some space. And I'm going to have you copy down this problem right here. This is going to be our final example of this note. So pause here. And remember, copy down what you see. We're going to solve example 2 and example 3 in class, making sure you're applying this correctly. If you have any questions, write them in the question column for me. And please ask in class if you're confused at all. I'd love to clarify. All right, thanks again for another lecture, students.